Hi, my name is David Werden. Today I'm going to talk about warm-up. Now for me, warm-up is not the same every day, although the philosophy is the same. I think about what I need to do, what's coming up today and in the coming days. Also, I try to assess how my chops are feeling. Do they feel kind of stiff or dry today? Do they feel fairly normal? If it's early in the morning, they're likely to feel sleepy yet, probably stiff in that case. If I've been doing normal things, talking to people, had a couple meals along the way, by the time I get to practicing, the lips will feel more normal. So the situation in which I start practicing is different on different days. Therefore, I vary the routine depending on what I need. The basic concepts beyond that are similar each day. I don't have a memorized routine. I'll start with some long tones though. That helps to get the chops set and helps me hear the sound. I want the sound to be clear and stable as I hold a note out a little bit. I'll change notes, try it again. Gradually, I'll introduce slurring to that, so slurring between notes. I'll build the range up then. I'll go up a little higher, down a little lower after starting on a comfortable note. Expand the range up and down. At some point in there, I'll introduce tonguing when I start to feel comfortable. I may introduce multiple tonguing at that time, or I may do some lip slurs at the time. Again, it depends on how I'm feeling and what's coming up. They generally are all part of each day's activities. I also try to extend my range each day, or at least touch the range that I have each day. So I'll play down quite low, usually off below where the horn can theoretically go, so below the low B concert, down to some false tones. And I'll also try to play up into my upper register. And again, depending on the day, my high E flat is usually fairly solid, so I'll go at least that far generally. Again, these are all mix and match situations, or I might vary my routine tomorrow. Today is a little bit different for me. The last 6 weeks have been a very bad time for practice. The first 3 of those I was traveling without the horn. In those weeks I probably had 7 days of practice scattered throughout. In the last 3 weeks I've not touched the horn at all until just now. I had some oral surgery that has to heal first, and it's feeling good now, so I think I can go ahead and practice. I read a clinic by Bill Watrous once when he talked about warm-ups. He was a famous jazz trombonist. And he said he believes the person should start on the note that is most comfortable for them. And I do that. I take that to mean not only one that's very solid, but one that doesn't seem to stress my chops either way. It's not so low that I'll have trouble getting it out when the chops are stiff. It's not up in the middle or high range to where I'm starting to use some muscles more. I want the most relaxed feel when I start. For me, that's a low B flat, concert B flat. I'm starting so far about a mezzo piano or mezzo forte. The same as the other principles I discussed, I want that volume to be medium as well as I'm warming up. I wouldn't want to start at a pianissimo because that might require some unusual motions and effort to get the notes to speak at all. So once again, I'm trying to stay comfortable at first. Beginning now to slur. When I'm first warming up, if the chops are stiff, and actually today they should feel much worse than they do, a slur can be kind of hard. It breaks the airstream, or can break the airstream, which we don't want. We want to keep things moving. So it felt like time to slur, and I did only a half step, and that worked fine. Now we'll try a whole step. I didn't like the sound of the second note. It didn't center right away, so I'll try that same thing once again. I still don't like it, so now I'm going to focus on just that second note. Back to the slur. That seems to be as good as it's going to get right now. A little bubble between the notes, but I'll take that and move on. Now, toward the end of the previous phrase, the B flat and C didn't sound very good. I think that's because I was getting down more to the bottom of my air supply. In addition to exercising my chops, and later we'll do the tongue, the air needs exercise too. Just Dorval walking around and talking to people and doing things, coughing a lot, which I've been doing lately, isn't the right kind of exercise for what we need to play. So the lungs didn't have quite as much control as they started to get more empty. I'm not sure that will improve today, but I'll keep trying. That was somewhat better. What I'm playing so far are very simple musical concepts. I'm playing single notes, adjacent notes. I'm doing scale fragments, down or up scales, and some mixed broken slurs, we call them, or broken intervals, where you go up a third, down a second, up a third, down a second. Like that. I'll get more into scales in a minute. I'll go into chromatics fairly soon. If you're uncomfortable doing this out of memory, try to get comfortable, because it's a handy skill to have. Oftentimes you don't have your printed out warm-up or even a music stand where you might have to warm up. Let's move on to longer scales right now before we go to chromatic. So I'm doing diatonic scales and I'm doing major scales. My brain doesn't have to work quite as hard. I learned major scales first, and they're the ones I'm most comfortable with, of course. When I'm just noodling like that, moving around even something known like a scale, I still try to maneuver it so I end on a strong beat, which is why I put that last little turnaround in there. That helps me learn to be more flexible and be really comfortable just playing the note out of instinct almost. So I know the scale so well that I can do things like that without having to think. You'll find that's very valuable when you're reading difficult music, sight reading especially. If you know scales and arpeggios, that's about 75% of the sight reading you're going to have to do. There'll be scales and arpeggios in part in what you're trying to sight read. So having those instinctive will really help you. Now, I've saved a more difficult thing for a little bit later. I'll try that about now. I'm going to first of all slur down into the pedal tone. I'll probably do an arpeggio, introduce arpeggios at this point. The air goes out pretty fast when I get down that low, so that helps me to, again, get control over that lower part of the lung capacity. I'll go down a little lower than that yet, though. As I'm working through there, especially in the crossover between the notes you play with the fourth valve and some others, and that open pedal tone B flat, it's a pretty big jump. The notes with all kinds of valves in operation are naturally stuffier because you're blowing through a lot more curves and tubing. When you get down to the B flat, that's the very minimum amount of tubing the instrument has and the minimum amount of curves that you're blowing through, so it's very open. So that crossover is very tough. More challenging for me than what I just did is to start on the B flat or maybe an A natural and then try to do a scale up from there. So I'm going right away from the open note to the more closed, stuffy notes. That went pretty well. Next I'll try it with an A natural. That's a little tougher because we're then going from the second valve to 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is literally all the tubing we've got. I lost my focus there. I know that scale, but I lost track of where I was. So I'll try it again just to imprint it more in my brain. No matter what range I'm in now, I'm trying to keep the tone as clear and open as possible. That's why I started on a B flat, which is a pretty easy note for me. But even when I get down low, I still want the notes to be open. It's very easy to close up down there. It helps the notes to speak more quickly, especially in the stuffy range, 4 plus other valves. So it's a little easier to play them if you do it this way. By closing up a little bit, there's not as much chance that you're going to lose the note, lose the pitch between notes. Your air, when you're playing more open, your lips are coming apart further as you play. And when there's a little interruption by the valves moving, they might not make a noise if they're that far apart. And you can just lose the note. But I still try to keep a good, clear tone. Even down there. Now that's as far down as I usually go to start with. I'll go a little further later if we get to that. Now I'm going to start going up a bit more. I've been up into the middle range, but not very far beyond it, and certainly not very often up there. We'll try that again if I can remember what I just did. I'm choosing different scales now. I'm getting out of B flat a little bit, although I'll come back to it, I'm sure. Again, just to exercise my brain a little bit as I'm exercising my fingers, chops, and lungs. B natural. Up a half step now. Again, I'm putting some variations in there just to keep my brain active, to make it think about how I want to approach that bottom note. In this case, I got to the second last note, went up to the fifth of the scale, and then came down. So that was up to an A natural, I think I went to. Let's go a little bit higher. I think I'll go back to a B flat scale. Introducing more challenges along the way. I'm still slurring though, and I'm still trying to keep things smooth, not to disrupt things, not to wake up my tongue just yet. Let's skip over a little bit and go right to a D flat scale. I'll keep going up, I think. Let's try to get to the E flat at least and see how it works today. I'll go to a D though first for a stopover. Now that's actually a harder note. The D is a little stuffy on most euphoniums. On this one it works reasonably well open, although it's flat. 1 and 2 is better in tune, but it's very dangerous. It's a little slippery with 1 and 2, so we'll see which one works the best today. Now I'll try it with 1 and 2. That worked out all right. Let's try the E flat and see how that goes. Pretty confident of that one. If it works well, I'll probably try to go to an E natural, possibly an F. Not too bad. So I get 4 scale octaves there as well, starting to introduce more difficulty. That time my lungs had to work pretty hard. By the time I got to the bottom, they were just about empty. That time when I went down to the bottom, I did a little alternate fingering routine. I like to have those incorporated in the back of my brain where they can just be called out as needed. So instead of playing a cross fingering to do that major arpeggio, if you watch my 4th valve and the other hand if you can, so when you get to, instead of changing out of the 4th valve and going to 1st, you can keep 4th down and add 3rd instead. So 2, 3, and 4. Gives you much more facility as you're doing those things. Once again, I'm gradually adding things to my warm-up routine. We'll go for the F scale now. This time I'm going to start lower. I'll start on the low, middle low F. It'll work my lungs a little harder. I also want to make sure I don't get chop tight. If I just spend all that time working the upper range, my chops tend to get a little bit tight, and I start losing the low range. So I want to make sure I'm staying flexible. Now I learned for today the shape my chops are in right now. The F is pushing it, so I probably won't go there again. Having now done quite a few things without much tonguing, I'll start introducing tonguing. The same as everything else, I won't be tonguing, multiple tonguing very fast right off the bat. Start slowly, more widely separated use of the tongue, and gradually get it more intense. I struggled a little bit in that last scale passage. My tongue was actually working okay, it felt like anyway, but my chops and fingers weren't quite aligned. So the notes were a little bit fluffy, not all centered. As I'm working, I'm going to go through that kind of a passage again, and I'm going to try to get better center on the notes, on every note, slurred or tongued. So I'm going to slow it down a little bit to make sure that happens. That was better. So let's try a couple scale sequences. We'll start with slur 2, tongue 2. I'll start on the B flat. And I'll start on the low F. Let me push it down to the low register a little bit. Now, trouble coming down multiple times there, so that tells me I need to do a little more work there. I think I shall right now. Varying which notes are slurred, which are tongued, makes my brain work a little harder. It also can point out if your fingers aren't quite coordinated between two slurred notes, you might get by with it. But if they aren't coordinated and you're tonguing those notes, then you're going to hear the little fluffs in the middle. Let's go to E concert. That's not my favorite scale. That wasn't too bad. I'm going to go now into, try the same pattern with a little faster tongue. That's an option I'm choosing right now. I might have chosen on some days to go right into tongue scales or tongue something else. Wasn't very clean, was it? Now that involves a little jumping on the bottom, and that's something my chops are not typically real eager to do, so I'm going to let that one go. Normally I try to correct whatever I can as I'm warming up. Let's now go to multiple tonguing. For practice, I find it really, really helpful. Let's talk about double tonguing first. So I play a pattern at a pretty fast single tongue, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. Then I play it at the same tempo on the same note with double tonguing, ta-ka-ta-ka-ta, and try to make the two sound the same as much as possible. For me, it's almost impossible at this point, but I hope to get to where it does sound identical. So I'll do a little of that. I won't go on too much more today with that. I'll move right to triple tonguing, which is, for some reason I learned to triple tongue before I learned to double tongue. And in theory, in some ways that's harder, in some ways I suppose it's easier. You're using the ka less often, but you have to have some pretty fast tas, ta ta ka, or tu tu ku. So I've covered most of the basics with that. I'll do some double tonguing and scales usually. Little coordination trouble. So you hear the fluffs between notes. I might slow it down a little bit, which you should learn to do. Even if you're double tonguing, some people find it very awkward to double tongue slowly, but it's really the best way to practice. Otherwise, there's a middle ground in there where you don't have quite a fast enough single tongue or quite a slow enough double tongue. So being comfortable double tonguing slowly or triple tonguing gives you a lot of overlap, and it might help you when you have to accelerate or retard during a multiple tongue passage to switch between the two at a convenient time. So that's getting better, and I would probably do more of that in a typical warm-up, but this is already getting to be kind of a long talk here this morning. So that's my basic concept. I also like to work on things as much as I can in the warm-up, and sometimes the parts of the warm-up need to be very analytical, like when I'm practicing the multiple tonguing and accenting different parts of it. And there you want to be as dry and machine-like as possible so you can really hear what you're doing technically. For most of the warm-up, though, you don't want to treat yourself or the instrument like a machine. You want to treat yourself as a musician and the instrument like a musical instrument. So before very long in your scales, you want to put some shape into the scales as though it were a melody. Whoops, lost my place there. So again, a little bit up and down dynamics during my scale. You want to try to have your notes as smooth and connected and even as possible. These are all things you can work on during your warm-up, and you can combine many of them to shorten the time you need to warm up and to get down to serious business. The serious business usually is practicing the music you're getting ready for and so on, or performance or rehearsal. You want to be in the best shape possible when you start. You'll be much more satisfied, and a good warm-up is part of that. I do encourage you to be very familiar with the basics that you'll find in here, whether or not you use the book. Most of them are fairly easily memorized. Scales and arpeggios. Those are very easy to memorize. That's a major chord that I just played as well, major triad. You'll find those peppered throughout the music. There's a blog post I have on my site, dwerden.com. You might search for it. I'll try to remember to link it in the description down there on the video. That is, some examples are shown there of music that is basically either scales or arpeggios largely. Most music is a mixture of the two. So since these things are part of what you're going to be playing in rehearsal or performance, they should be part of your practice as well. We didn't spend much time on arpeggios. I apologize for that. My usual practice would be something like so different ways of mixing and matching. There's a common, I can't think what book it's out of, you hear a trombonist doing it a lot for some reason. Like that. I'm sure you've heard that before. That's all an arpeggio, just broken up in different ways. So again, a lot of things to incorporate in your practice. Try to get them all back here, all the fundamentals that you'll need, scales, arpeggios. Tonguing you already know how to do, so you should be able to automatically incorporate any given pattern of tonguing into a scale. I think if you learn to do that, it will help you improve much quicker because you'll use your time more efficiently, both in your warm-up and in your practice sessions. If you can, please visit my website at dwerden.com. The main website, before you get to the forum and the other stuff that's back there, the main website itself has links to all kinds of good stuff. There's an article on the compensating system that makes our horns better in tune because of these extra tubes back here. There's an article on intonation of different euphoniums with charts to compare them. There's a collection of articles on the main site still by Arthur Lehman, for example, and other articles from the magazine Euphonia. There's a ton of stuff out there, but you can also then go to the forum or the blog or the articles section that's linked to the big paragraph in the middle. That takes you into a forum discussion group that's just marvelous. There's a lot of good members there posting a lot of good stuff, and I try to post there as well. Advice, questions, things for sale, things you want to buy, all kinds of stuff there. Attached to that, there's a blog with, as I said, many of my ideas. And there's an article section, which I really call a guest article section. I've contributed a couple of things there, but mostly it's articles by other people. So all good content. Take a look when you have a chance. I think you'll learn quite a lot from that, and it's all free, best of all. Thanks for listening.